On the field, the USFL absolutely destroyed the XFL. Off the field with attendance? Well... Welcome everybody to JJ9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Garrett, and I represent the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about this league behind me right here, the United Football League, officially kicked off this weekend. Week 1 officially over. I'm live streaming just about every single game on my channel, Jaguar Gator 9. We're going to do live play-by-play color commentary on the game, so go check that out if you haven't already. These streams are a blast to do. And with that, I figure I'm going to do some UFL-related videos on JJ9 News, giving you updates on what's happening around the league, breakdowns and recaps of the games, some dumb decisions that happen, and whatnot. We're going to start with the attendance that happened over the 4 games, the numbers, and my thoughts on those numbers, whether it's surprising, whether it's disappointing, what to make of those numbers. First off, the opening game was the Arlington Renegades, the defending champions of the XFL, and the Birmingham Stallions of the USFL. That game won by Birmingham. That was the highest attendance of the week. Arlington drew 14,153 fans. This is an incredible number for the Renegades, and I'm really happy for them. It's their highest attendance ever since the XFL was revived in 2023. They averaged about 12,000 fans per game last year. There was no game that drew more than 13,000 fans, so for them to draw 14,000 fans, over 14,000 fans, is a really good sign. That lower bowl looked packed when I watched that game on TV. That was a really good sign to see. Now, obviously, there was hype surrounding playing the defending champion of the USFL in Birmingham. There was obvious hype and goodwill around winning the championship, but that is still very good to see. That is a very encouraging number. Arlington drawing over 14,000 fans a game, above what they drew last year, and that's a really good sign, obviously. The second game of the day on Saturday was the game between the Michigan Panthers and the St. Louis Battlehawks. Crazy ending to that game. Obviously, Jake Bates making that 64-yard field goal at the very end of the game. The number for that game for Michigan at Ford Field, 9,444 fans, so just shy of 10,000. Now, unlike the XFL last season, the USFL, outside of the game between Birmingham and New Jersey to kick the season off, did not release attendance numbers for the 2023 season. I hate that. 39 of the 40 games, there were no attendance figures that were reported. So we don't really have a gauge on Michigan and the attendance from last season. We have estimates. The estimate last year from reporters was that their first game drew close to 10,000, so about what they drew here, and then a significant drop-off in the other games. So the crowd appeared to be in line or better than most Michigan games from last year, which is good to see, especially because of the fact that there was a lot of pessimism surrounding the team. They were 1-4 at home last season, so not a lot of fun to go to games if you're a Panther fan last year, but they're probably going to get a giant boost for the next home game after all the publicity they got. They beat the Battlehawks, and on top of that, got a lot of coverage with the Jake Bates 64-yard field goal. My only concern with that, their next home game, it's the same time that the Detroit Tigers play the Oakland A's at Comerica Park. That game taking place on Sunday afternoon. I don't know why the Panthers didn't have that game on Saturday night instead of Sunday afternoon, since the Tigers play Saturday afternoon, so you figure no Michigan sports fan has to choose between watching the Tigers play and watching the Panthers play. You can make a doubleheader out of it because of how close Ford Field is to Comerica Park. They're basically in the same complex. Go to a Tigers game in the afternoon, go to the Panthers game at night. You could do that. I don't know why they're making them choose. Just poor scheduling on that front, but they should draw a pretty good crowd after what happened on Saturday. Now, in terms of the Sunday games, the first game on Easter Sunday featured the San Antonio Brahmas against the DC Defenders. That game in San Antonio drew 13,164 fans. Again, it was on a religious holiday. I think that's a fine number. I think 13,164 is a fine number. Now, you might be saying, well, it's under the average attendance that they had last season with the XFL, but keep in mind, that number was heavily inflated from that Week 1 game. The attendance at the final 4 games last season, so not counting the Week 1 game against St. Louis, was 12,667. So this was above the average that they had over the final 4 games last year. It's also an increase over last year when they also played at home on Easter Sunday against the Roughnecks, a Texas team. That game drew 12,243 fans. So this game drew about 1,000 more fans than they drew last year on Easter Sunday. So if you're looking at it like that, it's a year-to-year increase of 1,000, which is a good sign. And there's more pessimism surrounding this year's team than last year's team because the novelty factor is worn off and the fact that they were 3-7 last year. The games, if you were a Brahma fan, probably not that fun to go to because they were only 1-4 at home and they scored 15 or less in 3 of them. So considering all of that, this number is strong. And I would expect that number to go up as the season goes on, considering the fact that basketball season will soon be done. The Spurs will no longer be a threat in terms of the entertainment dollar in that regard, and the Brahmas might actually be a halfway decent team this year, which would be fun for the league. The final game on Sunday was the battle between the Houston Roughnecks and the Michigan Panthers. Now, Roughnecks drew 9,157 fans. It was the lowest number of the 4 games that took place this week. I would say it's the only true disappointing number of the week, considering the fact that the Roughnecks drew over 10,000 fans in each of their first 5 games last season. But there probably was a lot of confusion, and I can see why Houston drew such a low crowd. Number 1, Easter Sunday, obviously going to put a dent in the attendance since it is a religious holiday. Number 2, you're playing at a different stadium, a lot of confusion in that. Number 3, and the big one, for casual fans, they might be very confused as to what the heck the Roughnecks are. Because this Roughnecks team is the Roughnecks in name only. It's the Houston Gamblers roster from the USFL, but they just take on the Roughnecks name. It's a very, very confusing situation. It is basically the Houston Gamblers, but with the Roughnecks name, but with the Gamblers roster. It is very, very confusing. That might have thrown some casual fans off. A lot of people on stream were even confused, and they watch the UFL religiously, so I don't blame casual fans one bit for staying home while the confusion gets sorted out. On top of that, they're playing at Rice Stadium. You're less likely to draw a college crowd on Easter weekend versus other weekends. You're less likely to get people to walk up, college kids, because people might be away for the holiday. People go away on Easter weekend. They have some time off. They're not going to be on campus on Sunday, so they won't be able to go to the game. On top of that, Rice Stadium is considered by a lot of people to be a worse stadium than where the University of Houston plays their games. Houston is undergoing a renovation to their stadium. That is why TD-ECU Stadium was not available this year, and they had to move over to Rice Stadium. So I get why the Roughnecks did not draw a great crowd. On top of that, the Houston Astros were playing at the same exact time at home against one of their biggest rivals in the New York Yankees. And last year's worst attendance for the Roughnecks came when the Astros had a game the same day at home against the Texas Rangers. So the Roughnecks not only had to compete with Easter weekend, not only had to compete with the confusion of the whole branding situation, not only couldn't get the college crowd, but they also had to compete with the Houston Astros on opening weekend against the New York Yankees. So the deck was stacked against them. I would not panic about this number, 9,157. Obviously, for a team like Houston, not the best, but not panicking just yet. Now, having said that, barring the weather, there is no excuse for the next home game, which takes place in 3 weeks on April 21st against Arlington. It's a local rivalry game, so you could get some visiting fans. The Astros are on the road against the Nationals. The Dynamo don't play that weekend. If the Roughnecks don't draw well in that game, if they don't get into the 5 figures in that one, it might be time to worry about the viability of Houston spring football and the Roughnecks down there. But for now, from an attendance standpoint, this number, a bit disappointing, but considering all the circumstances that worked against them, I would not be too concerned about this number. So that's the breakdown in attendance. You get Arlington the best, 14,153. San Antonio, 13,164. Michigan, 9,444. And Houston, 9,157. And week 2, we get the St. Louis Battlehawks playing at home for the first time. They're opening up some sections of the upper deck. You can expect a crowd of over 35,000. I cannot wait for that game. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere, and that number is going to heavily inflate the attendance. The Battlehawks might outdraw all these teams by themselves, just from their number. I can't wait to see what happens there, and that's going to be a really fun game to watch. And we'll be doing all the action again on Jaguar Gator 9, live streaming the action, play-by-play color commentary for just about every single game this season. But what are your thoughts on the UFL attendance? Do you like the figures? Do you not like the figures? Will you be concerned with some of these figures? Do they surpass your expectations? Do they fall below your expectations? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. That's going to do for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jaguar Gator 9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. And we also do UFL streams every single week for just about every single game. Until next time, Jaguar Gator 9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.